Hello again. Thank you for your punctuality. That's really appreciated. We are going to start now with session 3, port infrastructures, enabling offshore renewable energies and hydrogen expansion. Our moderator is Francisco Correia de Fonseca. He's head of engineering and operations at WavEC. And we have here José Nogueira from Bondalti, Allard Klinkers from Port of Amsterdam, Monica Swanson from Port of Rotterdam, Eduardo Feio, administration of the Port of Aveiro and Figueira da Foz, and Pedro Ponte of Port of Setubal and Sesimbra. So the floor is yours.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you. But I've never seen your port. We've been focusing for a long time on the Sines port because there was an important project going on with liquid hydrogen.
What you guys are doing,
which is
okay,
now
so
Amsterdam,
yeah.
and not because
You're
of
a chemical company. Where
government, but
located?
because of other reasons. But
Yeah.
I think it's important to understand that
What kind
the
of
whole
chemical
port landscape. So the only pity is we don't travel
Yeah.
so much. We're a bit like we shouldn't be flying everywhere all the time. We also have other stuff to do. So it's a pity I
Already.
can't combine now. Yeah, I could have come yesterday. It's a pity we didn't meet one day earlier. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And the chlorine is
yeah.
the expert.
Okay. Okay, I can hear my voice, so it seems like we got ahead of the first technical difficulties. Great. Okay, so today, this session, we're going to talk about ports, offshore wind, and hydrogen, and how everything ties together. As you know, Portugal has always identified itself as a maritime nation, and ports have always played a fundamental role in how we trade, how we do commerce, how we get our culture, and now they'll play a role also in the large-scale deployment of renewable energy and advance the energy transition. We are all aware of the challenges that we have in front of us with offshore wind. We will need ports that are capable of building, manufacturing, integrating very large floating wind platforms, and that are getting bigger, and we will have to do it at a faster pace. But our conversation today extends beyond wind. Green hydrogen produced using renewable energy resources is a very relevant decarbonization vector, and ports can play a role not only as facilitators but also as a key player in the supply chain. So today I'm very delighted to share the stage with such an interesting panel of port experts and offshore wind experts and hydrogen. So maybe starting the conversation, I'll drive this first question to Eduardo. Well, as you know, we had a big report coming up in May of this year with the 3 working groups. And the third working group focused specifically on our port requirements for this offshore wind ambition. My question is, where are we today? What are the main challenges that have been identified?
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much to WavEC to make this happening here today. And Francisco, from May to now, we in the working group, and Ponte is already there also, it's also there, we are still working in trying to know how we can make the correct investments in the ports to prepare the ports for the big challenge that we have in the future in the offshore wind. So we don't stop our work. We have been working with the government, with the cabinets, and now we have a roadmap to what the investments you must make in the ports to be with the capacity to that challenge that we have in our front, it could be achieved. So we are still working now to see what are the works that we have to do in our ports to get things done in time. And you know that we have a very big challenge. We have not many time. We have to be prepared for the developers can do their investments and know that they have the port structure in Portugal that can support their work.
Okay, but so maybe driving this question to Pedro. Well, Port of Setubal was one of the most important ports in Europe for the floating wind, with the most floating wind experience. It was home for the first wind float prototype, and it was also the place where 2 platforms were built. My question is, what have you learned with this experience, and how can you actually speed up? Because now we don't have the same time. We have to output platforms at a much faster pace. What can be improved in this regard? What are your learnings so far?
First of all, let me thank you, WavEC, Marco, and Professor Sarmento and Francisco to having us here. Just let me comment on the report, then I'll go to your question. First of all, the report, the Group 3 report was focused on infrastructure. So first of all, we are trying to add value to that report. So that's an important thing. So you mentioned May, but actually the report went out in 11th of July. And we didn't stop working from there. So we are adding more information. And why is that? Because it's not just one more report. We went for the ones who need information to read and to see how we can do things here in Portugal. So we addressed the concessions, we addressed working stevedores here in Portugal as well, and we addressed the infrastructures. So not just the potential infrastructures, but the one that already exists. So the one can be built on the ones existing. So new ones, so greenfield ones, and brownfield ones. So that's what we did from July until now. Regarding your question, what we learned? First of all, ports are not isolated assets. We have port communities, and it's very important, because all this learning process is not just for the port administration. We are all learning. We are all learning in this room. So that's why we are trying to address what are these lessons. First of all, what is happening at the moment in Setubal? We have a large shipyard, LISBON, actually CEO is there, Nuno Sanchez is there. And of course, they are trying to understand how to be more efficient in their process. Actually, we listened to Aaron in the previous panel, and he is learning as well. So we have to learn, to be able to give some capacity and to believe in what we are doing. So we are all learning. What we can do to build faster? Actually, Aaron mentioned that. So we passed from a tubular construction for flat panel construction. We have some companies here, like Moffat as well, so we can simulate the operations. We can learn from this simulation, so we can be more efficient. That's what we are learning all together.
Okay. Great. And do you think that maybe expanding on this, do you think that the specialization of the ports and essentially dividing the work that some ports specify and develop, for example, platforms, other ports specifying, for example, integrating the turbine on the platform, do you think that is the way forward?
That's a key point. Actually, once again, on the report, we identified some specialization of ports. Some of those ports, from the early beginning, went out from this process. For instance, even Lisbon or Leixões were out from this process. But other ports have some excellent capacities. Actually, once again, Setubal and even Aveiro as well, it's a safe place. It's a river, but you have the mountains, so you have very calm waters and lot of space to grow. That's why we have this capacity. You mentioned wind float, so wind float was made there, Setubal. Wind float Atlantic was made there as well. So what we are trying to do is we're going to have some places to be building the platforms, but we're trying to do some more infrastructure to be able to give all the phases of the process. For instance, for Setubal, even the decommissioning of the platforms. We are thinking on that, on the end of the cycle, how we tackle that. So we have the specialization as well, but to be able to see all the phases of the process, how we can overpass those hurdles. Okay.
Thank you. Allard, maybe a question for you, and maybe you can expand on this. You were very kind to share a report on the offshore wind infrastructure needs for the North Sea. Is there anything that you can share on what should be the strategy here, and maybe make a little bit of a contrast with what's happening in Portugal?
Yeah, no, of course. First of all, thanks to Marco WavEC for the invitation and to the Dutch Embassy. I think it's great to be here and also share the experience from the Netherlands, together with Monica, of course. What you see in the NZEC report, which is a report showing the required port infrastructure for all the future wind farms to be built on the North Sea, which is 300 gigawatts on the North Sea, and total of 450 gigawatts in Europe. So that's a large amount which needs to be built on the North Sea for the whole ambition of Europe. And what you see is there is at the moment not the right port infrastructure available for all the ports connected to the North Sea. Because this report is not only showing the issues and the challenges, but also potential solutions, and I think that's very important because we need to work all together as ports, as industry, as developers, to see how can we make it work to really get this energy transition going and to prevent that it will get on a hold because of a lack of port infrastructure, of problems in supply chain. What would help are three things. Standardization of the turbines for a certain period, because what you see now is that the turbines are increasing in a very rapid time, which is also a reason that some OEMs are not able to make money at the moment. And if we get that on a hold for a few years, say to 2035, for example, put it on a maximum of 20 megawatts per turbine, so there is still room to innovate and to make larger turbines, but at least there's a limit to the size of the blades, the size of the towers, and the size of the nacelles. And that would help to know what we need to invest in as a port or as all the ports in the infrastructure. Because now you need to make a larger draft, stronger quay sites, larger placement areas for all the turbines, and you don't know where it ends. And in port infrastructure, you don't invest that for 10 or 15 years. You invest in port infrastructure for 50 years because it's so expensive. So that's the first thing. The second thing, it would really help if there's a clear roadmap. I mean, it has been said before in the previous panels as well, but a clear roadmap, and not only for 5 or 7 years, but really a roadmap to up to 2040 and maybe even to 2050, with set timelines and clear overview of the amount of gigawatt to be installed at certain locations. Because by that, like marine contractors like Boskalis and Van Oort, they move all over the world. They will get their assets going. But as a port, you are of course restricted to the area you are in, and you can only make these investments if you know what will be the potential area of projects which you can host from your port. And then the third item is make sure that the tenders are large enough. So starting from 1 gigawatt, maybe even larger. and include in these tenders also the port selection. So if clients, developers already need in the tender to think of which port they are going to use, it would really help for ports as well to get the discussion with the developers prior the tender is handed in. And now what you see is happening is that tenders are being finished, a developer is chosen, and then they're going to talk to a port, are you able to facilitate this 1 or 2 gigawatt project? And often that's way too late in the game, because then you only have 4 or 3 years left to do the logistics and everything around. And that's a too short amount of time to invest in the port infrastructure. So port is not able to get the right infrastructure in place. So I think these are items that is not only for the North Sea ports, but also for the ports in the southern part of Europe and Portugal as well.
I think you touched on 2 very important points, which is the requirements, namely area, which is a big one, and one which is the business case for ports, which I think that is something that we can expand a little bit. But maybe before jumping into any of these questions, I forgot to mention in the beginning, but you have a QR code back there. You can point your camera, you can, with your phones, you can enter a website, and you can actually reply to some questions. In the end, we're going to comment on those and be able to ask questions as well from there. So feel free to do so. But after this intermission, so going to areas, do you see any, for example, for the Port of Amsterdam, do you see any potential areas for expansion? Are these areas free to take? Obviously not, but how can you negotiate to expand the area of the port for a given purpose? Because you have to actually change the use of the area. Sometimes it can be, I'll assume no, but residential. Sometimes it can be another use case, and you have to use it for industrial purposes. How can you do this?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point you touch upon, because the easy areas are already developed. So the port, it's often from historical basis that they are developed from fishing ports or other activities. So now we are at the moment that only the areas can be developed that are already have a different destination, residential destinations or maybe different activities. And of course, with fossil fuels phasing out, there comes a new opportunity. But it needs to be interesting for ports to invest in infrastructure for offshore wind as well. Because what you see is the requirements for offshore wind is much higher than for regular activities like bulk or other activities in the port. Because you need stronger quaysides, more depth. Well, already mentioned it. And these are all things you only can invest in and get the business case ready if you know there's a pipeline of projects coming in. What we experience now in the Port of Amsterdam, we are developing a new site, which is very close to a steel factory. And it's very challenging with the permitting and everything around that. And the only way we can do this is together with the national government, together with the business close by, and also involve the people living close by to make sure they are aware of what's going to happen and what will be invested in and what the activities will be in the future. And it would be even better if they can also have a say in if they how they would like to see it, so they have the less possible negative influence like noise or lights at their homes. So you really need to involve the society close by to get these developments going.
Okay, maybe Eduardo or Pedro from the Portuguese side, is anything that jumps into...
Yes, what Allard just said, it's very important. It's a challenge for the port administrations to be able to choose what investment we want to take. And how do you select the use of the space? So you have this finite space. So you have to be very keen to select what projects you'd like to take. Not just in the land area, but even on the sea area as well. Mm-hmm. What kind of projects you want to take, you are able to take. Which of those projects give you more value, not just for the port community, for the country, for the region. So that's a major challenge for all the port administrations, to select the projects. Okay.
Because you cannot do the optimization ports-wise. You have to do the global optimization in a sense, and sometimes the local optimization.
And in that way, I think that the report was very good, because we have a very strong now vision of our port system in Portugal for offshore. We have Viana do Castelo, we have Aveiro, we have Figueira da Foz, we have Setubal, and we have Sines. And we know what we can do there and what the expansions that we need to do. For instance, in Aveiro, we have 1 million square meters to offshore wind that the government is preparing to give to the port, and that's very important because you can have different areas. We have different solutions also in Viana do Castelo for biggest areas for supporting the offshore. We have obviously in Setubal a lot of area. We have in Sines a great potential also, and we have also in Figueira da Foz, it is a small port, a great capacity to support the OM operations in future. So we have the big picture. Now you must have the money, the investments, and the government were working on that until now, and it still work. And you know what you have to do. We have not many time, as I said before, and we have also a very important area that is the industry to follow up these investments, not only developers, but the building of some components. For instance, in Aveiro, we have CS Wind. We'll speak about it in the last panel. It's a very big factory now. It's one of the biggest in Europe. It's making towers. We have more areas in Aveiro, for instance, to new factories. Obviously, in Setubal, we have also. So we can offer to the world the capacities that we have. We have challenge in training people to work in the factories and to work in offshore. And we have new solutions, for instance, in energy like hydrogen that we are going to speak now, and that they could be also different challenge for the ports. And for instance, for ports like Aveiro or Setubal, it could be a very important challenge.
Right. Allard, I think you're going to
Yeah.
comment something?
What I wanted to mention is as well, ports really cooperate together. So often the questions being asked are, do you compete, or do you see, for example, Amsterdam, Rotterdam? Do you see Rotterdam as competition? But we really cooperate on the type of activities we do, and we really try to add to each other. For example, Monica is involved on hydrogen. I think she will be explaining more about that in a minute. But together with Rotterdam, Amsterdam looks at what can we do on the hydrogen imports, the hydrogen developments, and make sure that we're not going to compete on a distance of 100 kilometers with a similar same activities, but really add value to each other's activities. And I think that's very important to remember that ports, they are used to cooperate for many years already. And I think especially with this energy transition, we really need to do that to prevent that everybody is involved on the same type of activities. And ending up with no activities at all.
Monica, this is a perfect lead for you.
Here.
Well, first of all, the Port of Rotterdam has played a big part in floating wind. It was where the platforms from the Klinkers line were built, and actually it was the first port where total port maintenance occurred, so that's a big one. But going maybe into the hydrogen bit, and maybe you can comment a little bit of this area challenges of the requirement for getting area. From the Port of Rotterdam, what can you say about this requirements for expanding the area of the port, and basically changing the business case, as you're speaking about hydrogen as well, I'm sure.
Well, this is also about port planning, about what we've been discussing so far. We have a very busy port. It's big, there's over 3,000 companies doing their things, and we always have to be a bit ahead of the game. We always have to think about new developments in the future, develop scenarios, and that's what we do. So we've been working on hydrogen since about 2013, when a colleague of mine who had a good idea was actually supported in that idea by being allowed to sort of set up a small, very small hydrogen team just to make, develop a vision for it. Because what we have to do, of course, is to really anticipate. And one of the parts of his vision was that maybe there could be clean, green hydrogen production in Rotterdam. But you need to have a cluster approach. You can't just put it everywhere. So you have to develop, you do your port plan. For that, you would need a lot of wind electricity, so the connection with the wind projects was made. You also need the high voltage electricity connection, which is expensive and takes a lot of time planning. And you also need to have because we don't do these things ourselves, we need to actually get the community to want to do it. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit the other way around in this case. Normally there's, you know, a company that says, I want to do something in your port. And this is where we said, we want to make this happen in our port. So we were actually asking commercial companies like Shell, like Air Liquide, like all these, you know, would you be in for, you know, doing this? Would you want to do this in our port? And there's a bit of an idea that Rotterdam is full and cannot be developed, but there's always room for development, always, because plots that are in use could change owners. And what we also see a lot is several companies who are sort of adjacent to each other. They sort of share a little part of their area and say, hey, we'll do a new terminal, for instance, for ammonia. There's a lot of ammonia. We're also working on liquid like you are. Congratulations again, by the way. So there's a lot of things happening, but we're always preparing for it, always. But together with the community, but always a little bit before they start actually, sometimes even thinking about it. Yeah.
So how big is the role of imports in your case for the port of Rotterdam?
Yeah, that's my job, imports.
I know.
It will be very important. It's a good question to ask me. Yeah, it's a smart move. No, but I've been just for the audience, in case you don't know me, but I've been working on trying to connect with projects worldwide in a number of areas of the world to see how we could connect with production projects for hydrogen and connect volumes to Rotterdam to fill that new infrastructure we've been planning. And it's been quite a challenging thing. We were and still are, you know, sometimes concerned because we really wanted to move faster. And what we now see is things are mainly slowing down. Of course, it's a huge change we're trying to achieve. It's actually like what a gentleman earlier this morning said. It's like planning a trip to the moon, but with the whole world working together on it, which is quite complicated considering politics and what's happening everywhere. So, and there's so much capital required, so much capital. We're trying to change the whole economical system, the whole energy system. I'm trying to think, what was your question? What's the role of imports?
Like in percentage, maybe in terms of percentage, like how much imports will play a role in the whole hydrogen economy that you're planning
well,
for?
we did a lot of analysis together with other large companies, research institutes, etc. And we believe that by 2050, we need 20 million tons of hydrogen. So that could be in the shape of ammonia, it could be liquid, it could be LOHCs maybe, it could also be compressed even, it could be many things, or methanol, or SAFs, and synthetic fuels, but with hydrogen as, you know, the common denominator of the volume, you can imagine that's a lot. And we expect by we can produce locally about 2 million tons, maybe 3, and then the rest of it, so up to the 20, needs to be imported.
Okay. In which countries are you looking for? Maybe it's also a good time to speak about that. Which kind of countries are you looking for this importing from?
Well, Portugal, for one. Bring it to mommy. But and to daddy.
It's not safe to ask a question that I know already the answer.
No, I'm just joking, of course. But no, well, there's what we've done, and we did it together with our government and other ports and everyone in Netherlands, other companies as well. There's a lot of, you know, first of all, is there good conditions for renewable energy? And will there be a surplus? Because you don't want to take it from somewhere where it's scarce. You want to make sure that it's a good deal for everyone. And it will actually happen because they need to have extra to sell and want to be in the market. So there's a lot of countries, you've been reading about them in the papers for sure. In the Middle East, they're double lucky. Yeah? They have the oil, the gas, and the good conditions. We're looking at, the risk is when I name a few, I miss out on a number as well, but any country with reasonable political stability, with a good sense of wanting to be in this market, with a surplus for export, with, you know, also environmental and socio-economical factors being met in a decent way, that's where we look with most energy, I would say.
Great. José, maybe the question now is for you, which is the obvious question. Well, you're working on green hydrogen projects. the question we can arrive to is, when can we have a surplus? I know we're looking first at self-consumption. Maybe we can expand a little bit on that first.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, let me thank WavEC and especially Marco for the invitation and to share a bit the vision of the industry and also electro-intensive industry like our chemical plant is in Estarreja, but also from a company that is using hydrogen and producing hydrogen nowadays for our current operations. And so obviously hydrogen is mainly the main stress factor now in hydrogen projects, and I think a bit what Monica was saying, that is slowing down the momentum that was created, is because most projects are facing tough decisions to get to FIDs. And the main reason for this is electricity costs. So green hydrogen projects require large amounts of electricity. They require competitive prices, and therefore it is hard to find a market nowadays for very high-priced hydrogen. So when we'll have excess of hydrogen, so we need to create the market first. And so it was very interesting to see the previous panels before discussing how these first offshore, mainly floating wind projects, they need to focus on quality and on de-risking their projects, and the cost will be high. And it's the same for green hydrogen projects. So we need to create a market. There's still not, let's say, a liquid market for hydrogen, let alone to talk about exports. So currently, and I think Monica and probably Allard will agree with me, the largest market for hydrogen is ammonia. So we need to decarbonize the ammonia market first. And so what I expect is that the main value chain that will absorb, let's say, the first quantities of green hydrogen will be in that market. And so it was very interesting to see when actually I met Marco obviously in a conference, Offshore Wind and Hydrogen Conference promoted by the Dutch government and RVO. And by the way, congrats. It was an excellent event that I think all companies, Portuguese companies and authorities should participate, because it's really interesting to see how the Dutch has progressed in the past in this field. But so going back to the corridors, I think that we need to focus on getting these new projects, the first projects to reach FID, and the first projects probably will be looking at the molecules that are easy to transport, and these are mainly ammonia. We are also looking at projects that are developing technology for transports in liquid form, but these ones are honestly at a very low TRL. As far as I know, there's only one project that is currently working as a pilot between Australia and Japan. They are facing many difficulties. Hydrogen is not an easy molecule to move. And nowadays, all hydrogen that is consumed is produced locally. That's for a reason. It's not mainly because of technological reasons, it's because of cost efficiency. And industry is driven by efficiency in the operations, but also efficiency in the cost of its raw materials. And for hydrogen, that's electricity. So it's very important to look at all opportunities to create conditions for large amounts of cheap, abundant, and renewable electricity. And once we set up those conditions, it's where we will see projects mature, be able to sell product on the market, either directly as hydrogen, either as ammonia, to be transported to Central European markets. And so it's a bit, we're still living a bit in the chicken and egg problem, but that we hope that the next few years it will be broken by the first, let's say, pilot projects that are yet to see the light of day. There's no yet, let's say, scalable 20, 50, 100 megawatts projects of green hydrogen. They are yet to find conditions for final investment decisions. So I think we are still a bit on that
On that phase.
on
on
that
stage.
phase. Yes.
So, yeah, sure.
Just quickly respond to that, because I like what you're saying, and I really feel it's up to, you know, there's a lot of capital required. Governments need to be very supportive of this, because as a hydrogen person, I'm a bit jealous of the offshore wind situation and then the renewable energy, because it was too expensive at first. It was considered too expensive, impossible, and wouldn't work. And then what has been achieved in like 20 to 25 years is tremendous. And it is really my belief that we can achieve the same for hydrogen, but we have to get the hesitation out of the market, and we have to create the conditions for success. But it cannot be done by just one port or one country or one government. It has to be really a communal effort, really. So, but it has to be done as fast as possible. So trust and getting the hesitation out of the market are very, very important.
Just to pick on this,
Yeah,
we have
okay.
seen that in previous panels, I think it was the RVO showed significant decrease in LCOE for bottom fix offshore wind. So, but obviously the first projects probably were extremely hard to develop, extremely expensive electricity. So industry for sure was not yet in a position to buy directly that electricity. But nowadays, we see, for instance, the largest chemical company in the world, BASF, in Germany, buying stakes directly in these offshore wind parks. Why? Because electricity from these ones have come to a point where it's competitive enough to be absorbed directly by industry in significant amounts. And so this is, I think this is the path that we need to take for offshore wind, and also for the hydrogen project. So we need to mature that, and it's very interesting to take into lessons learned from the Dutch and what they have achieved in this technology, and use it as a learning tool, and incorporated this also into the offshore wind, floating wind, if you like, in Portugal. So we want to be in a position where the industry is able to offtake significant amount of this electricity, because we will need it for current operations decarbonization, but also for expansion into new markets of Power-to-X molecules.
Right, maybe throwing this question to the Portuguese port side. Pedro, is there anything you can expand here? Have you been receiving contacts from hydrogen, people interested in doing hydrogen projects in your port?
Several projects regarding hydrogen, but not just hydrogen, agave and other materials. If we add 10 more times the space, 10 more times the interest of companies knocking on our doors, even with hydrogen. And it's very, very important. Even just a comment, yesterday our technical commission just pointed out a location for the airport. So once again, hydrogen could be important to look at not just hydrogen, but sustainable aviation fuel, and how the ports and all the logistic areas are able to produce this fuel to fill up some airports as well. So the new airport as well. So a new challenge for all of us, but for Setubal in particular. Additional from that, we have, of course, a large shipyard, and when the vessel leaves the shipyard, need to bunker. So once again, another opportunity to look for the e-fuels and to look for hydrogen. And additional on that, we have the industry. We have the paper factories, we have the cement factories, so you can capture this CO2. So it's a CO2 is going to be an asset to be combined with hydrogen, so to produce the e-fuels. So it's not just a problem, it's an excellent opportunity to combine hydrogen with CO2 and to be able to deliver e-fuels and other products for bunkering, not just the ship bunkering, but all the logistics, the supply chain of logistics. So it's very important for us. We are following the H2 ports. It's a European program regarding lifting capacity with hydrogen. So we are looking for hydrogen as well, and we are receiving lots of different proposition regarding investments in hydrogen and agave oil, as I just mentioned. Okay.
But then making again the connection with offshore wind, how does the requirements for ports, how they compare hydrogen and offshore wind? Obviously, it's a very different business, but are there any commonalities? Are there any synergies here?
First of all, I mentioned that it's very important the port planning. So when you are planning the spaces, you have to be able to leave some space for this use. So you have to think what kind of space you'll need for hydrogen or for bunkering. So once again, this is a very complex exercise, but you have to think ahead. What you're going to need in space to be able to deliver hydrogen and other challenge. So that's very important. And you mentioned what are the synergies between the wind and hydrogen. Of course, everybody knows, but it's very difficult to store energy, and hydrogen could be an excellent solution.
Allard, do you want anything to complement here?
Yeah, I think what Pedro said is it's the challenge on both with hydrogen and with offshore wind is infrastructure, the investments, and it's on a different level. Like infrastructure for hydrogen, for import, I mean, still vessels come in and you need to store it, but then do you build a pipeline so it's connected to the industry? Because you need to connect it to the places where the demand is. For us in Rotterdam and Amsterdam, you have the hinterland, so you have Germany with a large industrial cluster, but you need to connect that, and is that connected via barges, via pipelines, or no, that needs to be thought of, and it requires a lot of investments in the infrastructure, and that's related to the time also needed to make this all clear and make sure this is happening. And for offshore wind, it's more like the traditional investments in port infrastructure, so quay sites, water depth, draft, sufficient space. But in the end, it comes back to a business case for the infrastructure and for the logistics that's required for both hydrogen and offshore wind.
I think speaking about water depth, one problem or one challenge that we see very frequently mentioned is the large water depth requirements for floating wind, and I see that as one of the major requirements that maybe our Portuguese ports have. I think this is not as much as a challenge in your ports in Netherlands, because I've looked at our databases and it's considerably high. I think you have something like 16 meters.
Yeah, 14 to 15 in Amsterdam and more in Rotterdam. Yeah, well, trust me.
but my question
Sufficient.
is, increasing this depth in order to accommodate, increase the channels width and increasing the depth in order to accommodate the passages of these floating wind platforms, especially when they're integrated with wind turbines. What are the main challenges here in increasing these depths? Are these challenges technical, environmental, economical, probably all three, but what are your thoughts, maybe starting Pedro from your side?
Once again, an excellent question. Of course, we need to be able to bring the platforms, and they are getting larger. So it's a very important point to be able to dredge. Once again, if anyone doesn't know, Setubal is located on a river called Sado, so it's on the cross of the river and the Atlantic, and that's why it's so important to be able to dredge and to be able to pass these kind of platforms. But you mentioned this is a technical challenge. It's a tree of environment challenge. It's a sustainability regarding this access, these channels. So it's very important to cope with these three different things. But if you see the major risks that ASPO addressed, the dredging is not there. And why is that? Because dredging is a controlled process. We can be more assertive on using. Pascal is just was here, and he can say that as well. So it's more a controlled process at the moment. But it's and we have to take away this thinking that dredging is very bad for the river. It's not actually. We have dolphins inside the river as well in the Sado, so it's a natural indicator. They're still there. They are growing in the family. So, but once again, it's important to dredge and to be able to pass this platform. So it's a challenge, but of course, we have to address this challenge as well.
Yeah, I think that we have the three problems. In our system, we have only one port that it's natural with the good dips, it's thin. The other ones must have the three environmental assessment, the money to make the draft. So it's a challenge, but we are trying to deal with that. But for instance, for Aveiro, it's not so easy. We have 12 meters, 12.5, and put it more, it will be not easy, but we are working on that. And you know that they have new technologies, and we can get new solutions that can put the towers in the water in other ways. So we are looking to all the options. And going back a little bit to the hydrogen, for instance, not only in Setubal, but for instance, we have interest in Figueira da Foz. It's a very small port, but we have contacts for companies because we have two very big factories of paper there. So we are going to have 5 gigas in the eolic farms in front. We are going to have the cables coming to the coast, and it will be a good position to deal with hydrogen. For instance, Correia, it's near Aveiro, it's the port of Correia, it's Aveiro port, and obviously we are thinking about how to put hydrogen in our port, how to deal with that. We have been, for instance, last week in Valencia, seeing how the port is working with hydrogen, with their equipment. So it's a new challenge that we are seeing, and it's parallel to the offshore. What the offshore and the hydrogen says to us in the ports that we are now very away from the pier now. The ports are not the pier, are not the cargo, are complex systems of logistics and industry, and you must look to all dimensions of energy in that complex. But we have big challenge in Portugal. We are trying to look at that because you are seeing that we are going to speak about it. When you speak about the administration and red tape things, that could be constrainment, and things like environmental assessment and drafts must be, and Pedro speak about it, we must look at that in Portugal in a very precise way. We must work very hard to have the correct times to have a no or a yes.
Allard, is this something that you like to expand? I know that, well, as we mentioned, water depth is not a main issue, but how do you get around or how do you expedite this kind of licensing and permitting of this works, this construction works? Because, well, increasing the water depth will require dredging. This probably needs, as Pedro and Eduardo mentioned, some studies on environmental impacts. How can you expedite this?
I think working together on this is very important. I'm also connected to Wind Europe, and that's where we are with 30 offshore wind ports connected and discussing all the challenges we have and also the future requirements. I think Port of Aveiro is also now member, so Pedro, maybe also something for you to join. And that's why I mentioned at the beginning, the standardization in the industry for a certain period of time is very important, because once you build a quayside, you can dredge after that, but you can only dredge up to a certain level. So you have to know what is possible and where the industry will go to in the coming years. And if these vessels will get larger, the draft, but also in width, you need to adjust the canals, everything connected to it. And of course, you need to take into account the environmental impact. And I think that's getting more and more important because, port infrastructure is there for a long time, but you need to take into account the impact on the environment and really only invest in what is required and don't over-invest because expectations or uncertainties in the future are there.
So you touch on a very important point, which is not to over-dimension the port infrastructure. Maybe and also would love to hear Monica's perspective on this, but what are your insights from your side? How can you minimize the risk of not upgrading the ports too much that is unnecessary and that makes it more difficult, the business case?
Actually, when you choose the technical solution to build the new terminal, you can select what kind of methodology you're going to implement on that. Mm-hmm. So this is very related with the dredging. if you choose a solution, you will need the dredging material to put inside the terminal. If you are doing terminal in pillars, you don't need this dredging. So you are able to choose what kind of dredging volume you will need. Okay? So you are able to choose and to add value once again to the dredging material you just picked up. So because you are doing new terminals, new infrastructures. So that's why you are able not to overdo, to pass your need. You are very selective, and this material is classified not in a secret way. It's analyzed what kind of condition you have in this in sediments to be able to once again to add value to this sediment. And it's very important point once again is linked with the port planning. And you don't do infrastructure because you just remember to do. You do because you have a business case, you need that terminal, you need that infrastructure. And that's what we, the Portuguese Port Association is doing, to select what kind of investments you need. Not just infrastructure, but once again, dredging, the access. It's very important to have the safe passage of these platforms.
When we're speaking about not only the construction phase, but also the operation, because if you have a very big drip that you don't need, you are going to pay every year to draft it, and you speak about millions of euros. For instance, in our port, we spend more than 2 million euros normally to draft the port.
You said 2 million?
A year. If you put more 3 or 4 meters, it will be 3 or 4, because you must put the sand in some place that could be 5 miles away, 7 miles away, but at this moment you are contribute to support the beaches on our coast. That's important, but you must know what should the money that you should spend it. So it's very important to have the dimension of the projects and standardization of the offshore wind floating. It's very important because otherwise we're trying to make it bigger, but don't make it, and we must make money, I think. Developers.
Because I find it a very interesting topic. How do you dimension your how do you dimension what you're doing, your investments? How do you put it in proportion? As a rule, what we see in Rotterdam is if we invest €1, commercial companies on top of our investment will do 8 to 12 euros. So it sort of brings the economy, it sort of pushes things forward. But for instance, the pipeline we're doing into Germany and connections to the gas grid, we're both doing, I think. It's considered a project of national importance, and this is where governments have to be supportive. That's that one point. But to be able to dimension actually, what kind of pipelining do you need? Will it be only hydrogen, pure hydrogen, or will it also need to be ammonia, because we get a lot of ammonia? Will there be, and also CO2? We're going to take CO2 from German industry and store it underneath sea level. All these things are a cooperation, but you also need to know, the volumes. This is one of the reasons we've been traveling the world. Well, not traveling. Most of it happened during COVID, so all online research really, and lots of talking with parties. But we've now connected to over 200 projects in the world where we know they want to produce for export. And we keep analyzing the data and the stage they're in, all these projects, just to know what will be coming in at all. And we take off percentages for stuff going to other ports. We think all the ports are needed because there's bigger volumes because of the energy density. So it's going to be bigger volumes than in oil and normal gas. So we're all fine, you could say, in that sense. But it has to be, you have to keep track of it all the time, just to be able to know, is it going to be a pipeline like this or a pipeline like that? Yes.
Yeah, I think you touched on the spillover benefits, which is actually a question that I also wanted to ask. So I read this, I think a few months ago, a report that said that for each euro, or actually it was pound because it was a study for the UK, each pound of investment in the UK port infrastructure, it returned something like around 5 to 6 pounds of return to the economy. I don't have these figures for Portugal. I've read some figures very long time that was very high. It can be it can be different. But I would like to expand a little bit on what are the spillover benefits. If you have any comments on this, maybe starting with Allard. Do you have any comment here?
Well, the only thing I can say about that is the reason that the governments also need to play a role in it, because this money flows into the society and into the whole economy, but not directly to the ports often. So the business case, if that's the responsibility of the port itself, it is often very challenging. So that's why you need to make it a cooperation between either local or national governments, because it's also of national importance that these projects are realized. I mean, we need these offshore wind projects to get the hydrogen, to get green hydrogen, to get the energy transition. So it's all going back to the chicken and egg story. You need to make the investments, so in the end you will have green hydrogen, and that's what you need to do together. So I think it's a joint involvement. At least that's what I see close to the North Sea.
Pedro, I saw that you.
The spillover, of course, it's going to be job creation, first of all. You are creating new jobs. You are able to pay more. You are able to address other dimensions of the economy. You are able to promote innovation as well. So you cannot analyze just in the cargo, the point of view of cargo. It's much more than that. The cargo is just the classical challenge of the ports, but at the moment they are much more than just cargo movers. Okay? And that's why when you told us this number, £1 investment to receive 5 on the economy, I believe our numbers in Portugal, even in the European Commission, it's much higher than the one you just mentioned. Okay.
Okay, so that's from the economic point of view. It's also something that is very obvious that there's.
Ports are levers of the economy.
That's a good soundbite.
Yeah, it is.
Right.
When we speak about wind float, you will speak also not only port as cargo, but also as a place for industry, because some industries must be in the port. And we have a concrete example in the Aveiro port, the Cash window, Asivamat before, and some people are here from that time, and they know what's the impact in the local economy, regional economy, and national economy of only one investment in the one industry. So we're speaking a lot of euros per €1 of investment in the port, but very much. So it's very important for the ports, not only for the cargo, but because they are place of industry.
Okay, and actually one clear example that it's the off-taker, right? Because for €1 of investment, if there is more bigger capacity, there's the ability for off-takers companies to develop their business there and pay taxes, contribute to the economy, to the GDP. So I think that's one of the key points. So I grow sensitive of the time, and I know that we are the ones stopping you from lunch. We're between you and lunch here. So I have one final question, and then we'll move to some of the questions that are from the audience. If you didn't ask the questions just yet, hurry up. So I guess that the one question related to R&D. If you had to pick one thing as a R&D, research and development priority, what would you pick right now in respect to offshore wind and ports and hydrogen? And maybe starting from maybe José from your side.
Well, regarding transport, I think the biggest challenge is that state of the art shows that we don't like to move hydrogen. That's the fact, because it's so expensive to compress, to liquefy, and to move from one place to the other, not alone from one country like Portugal to Netherlands. So any developments regarding lowering the cost, especially the specific consumption of all the process, that probably should be on the port of liquefying and putting this hydrogen into vessels that can transport the product to other continents. That would be a big breakthrough. I would say that's one of the biggest challenges.
Right. Allard, any comments here?
I think the biggest challenge is related to hydrogen and to bunker fuels. I think the shipping industry is still one of the most polluting industry, and there are some pilots, but it's going very slow. You see some inland barges now in the Netherlands moving either to batteries and some to hydrogen. But I think especially for the worldwide shipping industry, there really needs to be a focus on what's now the best type of bunker fuel, the most efficient, and what's required also then for the infrastructure to make sure these vessels can bunker internationally, because in the end it's such an international industry, and it is a bit related to the airplane industry, which is also the SAFs. It's already slowly developing, but I think that's also a very big challenge at the moment. So it requires a lot of research and agreement internationally.
All right. Any comments that you want to take?
Yes,
about this?
you mentioned to choose, the R&D, what we'd like to prioritize. If you look to the image that you put there, you select wind, solar, and wave. So I believe that's a major challenge, how you integrate this kind of energy metrics. It's a very important point. And let me say that we already have 2 free zones to test, one of them on the north of the country and one near Setubal, so to be able to test, to do some pilots. As Aaron mentioned, to learn from what they are doing, to take risk from there, to be able to be sure that what you are doing well. So if you ask for R&D, I point out pilots to test, to be able to integrate all this energy.
Yeah.
I could say the same, and obviously we have also a GLT in the Aveiro region now, with the University of Aveiro that are very looking to the sea problems and the air problems, so we can test and see how we can make it better.
I cannot resist to ask this question because it was actually the result of a headline that was recently published, and it was something along the lines, obviously in Portuguese, but it said, Portugal depends on Galician ports for its offshore wind ambitions by 2030, and this was referring the 2 gigawatts of capacity, and this was a study by INEGI. Do you have any comments about this headline? Obviously, we're talking about not being able to do it ourselves, but we're talking also about collaboration. This has been a big topic so far, so
I think the story of the offshore wind, it's a collaboration. So
exactly.
Wind float, it was a process of Iberian collaboration from Aveiro to Setubal to north of Spain. So I see only the resume of the INEGI study. It's a very important study, a very good work. I know that they are working more in that study, and you have a very big challenge for trying to get to giga until the end of the decade. It's not easy, and you are going to need everything that you can have in Portugal, and otherwise to get that target. So we are working for that, but it's a challenge.
Actually, we receive every week different companies knocking on our doors. So they are looking for the Portuguese market, but more wider than that, for American market, for French market, for other markets. So you just mentioned, have we had to go by hand with Spain? Maybe, but we have the potential to grow to other markets. Even that's what the company is looking, some of them are looking for opportunities to be able to build here, but to cope with other markets. That's not just the Portuguese market. That's our experience. Every week, new companies knocking on doors.
So sometimes headlines are written in a way that they take a view that is more attention-grabbing.
It could be a risk,
but it's also an opportunity
as well. Yeah, that's what I would like to.
Okay, great. So I think we can move a little bit. So I hope that everyone has already filled in some of the questions. So this is a little bit of a sense of who is actually attending and the demographic in terms of sector. Whoop, this moved a little bit too quick. Why is this happening? Are we facing? I don't have a mouse, so I'm not sure if I. Can you please press on the X, if that's okay? I shouldn't be in this slide, and I cannot control it. It's just the X. Sorry, there's a big screen. No. Well, we can jump on the demographics, and Okay, so that was the demographics, a big percentage let's go back. Percentage of consultants, some research university, OEMs as well, present, and project developers, as we've seen in the previous panels. Maybe jumping into one question that asked, which was, in the context of the large-scale deployment of floating wind, what are the most important challenges faced by ports? And everyone was asked to rank in terms of the challenge. Do you have any comment here about this sequence? So the timeline for infrastructure upgrades comes as first, challenging port requirements that we all spoke about this, ensuring adequate long-term business case for ports. Well, maybe the ports here might have a different opinion in this ranking. Oh, it's still changing in real time. Then environmental licensing and permitting and other. Maybe starting from the right to the left, Pedro, do you have...
Yes, of the number...
Does this surprise you?
No, it's interesting to see what the audience is seeing, what the audience is searching for information. It's very important to have this kind of questions to be addressed. But actually, the third one, ensuring adequate long-term business case for ports, for us, it's very important. For everyone in this room, actually. Mm-hmm. And why is that? Because you have to think that no one is able to deliver by himself. So we have to join hands, and public-private entities to be able to choose projects, but to be able to deliver, and not just words as we all is saying. So action is very important, but I'm going to address the third question. I believe for port administrations, is very important as well. Okay.
Allard, do you have any comment? Are you surprised by this sequence?
No, not really surprised. How I see it, it's all quite close together, and I think that has a fair reason, because these are all, very important challenges. I think number 4 is often underestimated how challenging this can be. It's of course different per site and per location. But as said in the beginning, the easy areas are already developed. So everywhere you need to develop now, you have a lot of environmental impact. You have to take into account the impact on ecology. So that can definitely be for us. For example, Port of Amsterdam, we are now investing in a new port expansion, and this is one of the major challenges, closely connected to the business case. But this is one of the major challenges for us. So, yeah.
Do you have the same experience, Monica? Eduardo?
If you are speaking about the place that we already have the permit, it's easy, and we have that situation in Aveiro. One area of the port don't need the environmental assessment. We can make the investment in 1 year or 2. Project money, make it. If you have to make the expansion, you are going to take 3, 4, 5 years. So, and it could be good. It could take it well or no. So we have that. So the number. 4 now, it's 3.
I think someone listened to you, Allard.
And in the end of the morning, and we keep talking to be
louder.
Somebody listen to you.
Can I take, yeah?
Of course.
At the risk of being a bit contrary, I would like to take this question from the perspective of hydrogen developments. It's easier for me.
Of course.
And I would go for other.
Okay. Can you
as
expand?
well.
Great.
I think the first 4 are kind of what people will be working on anyway.
Okay.
But I think for hydrogen, because it's so new, there's a lot of insecurities in every bit of the supply chain. And all those insecurities add up to high cost, because banks will only lend money at higher cost if there's still no off-taker, if there's still uncertainties. So I think the other, in this case, is to really work very hard together to bring down the actual cost of capital, which could be 40 to 60% of hydrogen projects at the moment, which is a huge amount of money. We could save that if we could de-risk and also be a bit more courageous and just do it. And for those in finance to actually find ways of also, looking at it from a different perspective. So that would be my 2 cents.
Nice. Thank you for that. José,
Just
do you
quickly,
agree?
although I agree with Monica, I think number 4 probably should be first. I'll explain why. But I would take out ports, ensuring adequate long-term business cases. This is important because for the offshore industry, for the producer of, let's say, developer, they need a positive business case. To do that, they need an off-taker. So that means an integrated positive business case between the producer of the electricity, the consumer of electricity, that in the end could be a hydrogen producer, as Monica said. And only afterwards they can somehow give the consistency that ports will need to build their infrastructure to support all of these businesses. And we are taking also into account financing all of this. So we need to close the loop and ensure that a project is an integrated project with the producer, consumer, and all the infrastructure of the ports in order to have a bankable business case. And this is why number 4, in my opinion, should be number 1.
If there's no business case, it's going to be expensive for all of us because ports cannot recoup
it will
on
not
that investment.
It will not happen.
Yeah.
So that's a no-no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we able to vote?
I think you just did. You just did. So maybe this is a question to capture the overall sentiment of the room. The first question was to if it was understood how the port infrastructure challenges, what are the port infrastructure challenges related to the deployment of offshore wind and hydrogen? Pretty big. And there is a sentiment about how optimistic are we about getting these port infrastructures ready on time to meet our climate targets? And actually, there's kind of some difference. So there's a very pessimistic ones. Then it fades out a little bit on the optimistic. So I would like to ask each one of you: are you optimistic or pessimistic about this offshore wind and hydrogen, preparing our ports for this offshore wind and hydrogen opportunity? Starting with you, José.
I think we need to take it step by step. And as was shown before in the previous panels, with the successful pilot project, there was so much new information, new requirements that led to new developments in the architecture, in the engineering. So we still need that. First, second, third pilot projects in the offshore that will enable, let's say, a cost-competitive technology in the future, which is exactly what the Power-to-X industry requires. We need abundant, but also cost-competitive energy. And for that, we need to create conditions for these pilot projects to bring us, let's say, the development that the industry needs. And probably 10 gigawatts, does not fit the pilot motto. Yes.
But I think one of the key words is on time, and
on
probably
time,
some people and on time to meet our climate targets. Maybe Allard. What's your
Well,
take on
I'm
this?
very optimistic. So I think, in this panel and working all together and all these people in the audience, I really think we can start developing and the willingness to create this. The climate targets, everybody has been following the COP, I guess. Yeah, that is a big issue, and that is a huge challenge. But I think the port infrastructure will not be the biggest issue to meet these targets. So I think we as ports and together with the industry, I think we can really make sure that the infrastructure won't be the biggest bottleneck. But to reach the climate targets, yeah, I think that's maybe a little bit less optimistic on that. Yeah.
Monica, are you optimistic or pessimistic?
Confident.
You're confident.
In our case, because we really started early, so we're fortunate to have had visionary management and stuff. But I can see that port infrastructure could be a bottleneck in the whole supply chain, export, import, because especially maybe in countries that are economically more challenged than most European countries are, and will need help also with professional port governance in some cases. There I might see a challenge, and that also needs to be resolved, with everybody trying to work together.
Yeah. All right. Eduardo.
I have a confession to make to you and everybody. I'm not normally optimistic. I'm pessimist. But in that specific case, speaking about Portuguese ports and seeing the work that you have been done in the last 1 year and what you are trying to do now, I am a little bit optimistic that you can get our infrastructure prepared until the end of the decade to meet that big challenge and try to get to 2 Giga, and after during next decade the rest of the 8 Giga, and prepare our country to be contributing to our climate targets that are very important. We all know that what's happening in the COP now. We see what we are seeing in news nowadays. For instance, we are going to have more 2 degrees during this year, more than before the industrialization. We have a challenge that you can miss it. So you must be all optimistic to work hard to implement our projects in renewable energy. So
Otherwise, there's no point.
otherwise you can. It's not necessary to be optimistic.
Okay, Pedro.
Francisco, I'm optimistic as well, and I believe it will happen. It's difficult to point out if there is a possibility of 10 gigawatts in the time frame just mentioned. It's very difficult, or more, it's impossible in that time frame. But it's important from our government to raise the bar and to challenge everyone to their own part to be able to show something and to be able to construct something. So I'm very optimistic. Let me, if you divide 10 gigawatts by 15 megawatt turbine, you are talking about 600 platforms. That's the challenge that we have, but that's the opportunity that all our society have as well. It's not just for ports. It's for insurance companies, it's for lawyers, for banks, it's for metallurgical industry. It's lots of different challenges. So that's not a challenge just for ports. It's for our community. So, and that's the same for other countries as well. So I'm very optimistic. Let me say that wind float was made in Setubal, so we have to learn, but to be able to replicate hundreds of times, different times.
Thank you for your answer. Well, let's move to some questions. I'm very sensitive on time, so probably we can just take a few. This was... Can we take one question? Okay. So you have talked about national strategy for ports, but should an European strategy be developed? 10 seconds, 15 seconds, reply. Who wants to take this one?
We are already involved in the European strategy as well. If you think in Repower Europe, you are thinking how do you repower Europe, the challenge for Portuguese ports. So our national strategy is linked with European strategy, not just for ports, but for energy as well.
And we have the wind planning that 2 weeks ago we received from the Commission, and it have some guidelines that we must try to use it well.
Perfect. So I think we can call this over. Thank you all. I want to express my gratitude to the panel. This was a very interesting conversation, and thank you all for attending. Let's all go to lunch.
O'clock, please.